Hi everyone, my name's Laura and I'm the Carpe Diem Stitcher, so called because I've got so much to sew but so little time to do it. So today's video is the sew along to show you how I turned a man's shirt which I bought from a charity shop for £5 into the top that Olivia is wearing behind me. So this was my entry for the Instagram challenge run by the lovely Karen from So Little Time and the awesome Becky from Notes from the Sewing Room, and the challenge was called Sew Up Cycle 22, and I'll link to their channels on Instagram and YouTube below. So if you want to find out how I did it, please stay tuned, and at the end of the video I'll come back to you wearing the top and with a little bit of a pattern review. So I'm going to send you into the sew along and I'll see you again at the end. So my plan is to make this pattern, and it's called, yeah, excuse the hieroglyphics, that's where my printer does weird things. The Shirt to Stockbridge top by Greyfriars and Grace. So the idea is that you make the pattern from an existing shirt, and you can make it either with or without a collar. So those are the versions with a collar. So you can see you can have a banded collar like that with a ruffle down the front. Sorry, do excuse the doorbell going in the background. You can make it with pleats around the collar, which you can see hopefully on that one, and pleats around the bottom of the sleeve. You can make it with, can you see it on here? Yeah, you can make it using the cuffs as little cap sleeves, or you can make it sleeveless and finish it off with bias binding. You can also, and somewhere I pulled out the pictures, you can get rid of the collar entirely and add a bit of a peplum on the bottom. So that's another alternative version that you can do. So really versatile pattern. And the idea is you just do it on the basis of using a man's shirt. My intention is to make probably this version here with the frills on the sleeves and round the neck. So that's the intention. So yes, so that's the plan. So this is the shirt, and it's a Marks & Spencer shirt, Marks & Spencer collection, and I got it from a charity shop over the summer for the princely sum of £5, and it is a 17.5-inch collar. It says in the instructions you actually need quite a big shirt to do it. And the only thing I have done so far, and you probably can't see that very well, is when you read through the pattern, it does tell you a bit later on that you should mark the fronts of the sleeves so that you know which side of the bodice to reinsert them into, because what you do is you cut them off and then you reattach them, but obviously they're shorter. And I decided that it's hard enough making sure you've got the right sleeve anyway, so I'd mark it now before I start chopping the shirt up. So yeah, so I'm going to get started, and the first thing I've got to do is on A4 this was only 16 pages, so I decided that I just was going to print it out on A4 and not worry about getting it printed on A0, partly because of time and partly because 16 pages is not that bad. Usually I would go for A0, but I thought I'd just crack on, print it out and do it. So I don't think you really need to see me sticking together pages of A4. So I'll do that first, not least because it's impossible to layer the sizes and just print out the ones you want on this. So you're not going to gain anything by me talking about my size now. So I'll stick these together. Then I'll come back and talk about what size I'm going to make and what adjustments I might need to make to the pattern. So I'll come back to you shortly. So I'm back, and assisted by my cup of coffee and the entertainment of YouTube, I have now stuck everything together. And actually I was quite lucky because the sleeve piece was pretty much self-standing, so I didn't have to stick all 16 pieces together. So that's the sleeve piece. And I have also got a front piece and a back piece, which I won't show you, but I'll show you at the point we come to cut it out. So all I've done at the minute is just cut roughly round the outlines of each of them so that I can decide what size I want to make, and I'm not dealing with an enormous piece of paper and trying to wave it around in front of the camera. So I had a look and got my husband to remeasure me, which I always hate doing, but I think it was a good idea to do it because I haven't measured myself for a while. So and also because I've started to use Stash Hub like everybody else, and you can put your measurements in it. So I got him to remeasure me this afternoon, and I've come out, for the purposes of this pattern, I've come out as having bust 36 inches, waist of 32 inches, and then for my hip I got him to take 2 measurements. So I got him to do a kind of high hip measurement of which is 39, and then my widest point, which is actually really the tops of my thighs, so 41 inches for that. And my shoulder to wrist measurement, which I thought also might be useful, is 22 inches, because I keep finding that things are too long in the sleeve. So I thought let's just measure that while we're at it. So what size does that mean that I need? Well, the reason I got him to take the high hip measurement was because I think actually I'm going to have the top sit not on my lower hip, not kind of right down to my thighs, but somewhere around my high hip. And I tried the shirt on as well, and that was really helpful in kind of deciding where I wanted to cut it off. Because you might think, oh well, you can't do that, but you actually can, because the shoulder seams stay. So where the shoulder seam is now is where the shoulder seam will be on the finished garment. So that's quite useful. So in terms of the sizing, so for a bust of 36 inches, that puts me squarely on a size small, because that is 36 inches. And I'm just checking, there's a little asterisk and it says measurement around the bust at maximum width, not bra size. So that's fine, that's what we did. And then my waist at 32 inches puts me in a size large, and my hip, if you take my high hip, puts me between a medium, which is a 40 inch, and a large, which is 42 inch. And then if you look at the finished garment measurements, the size small is a 40.5 inch finished garment measurements. So that's 4.5 inches of ease, which is quite a lot. And I might, in theory, be able to get away with the extra small, because that would be finished garment measurement of 38.5. But when I look at the hip, I think, want to stick probably with the 43.5 inches of ease, rather than having just 2.5 inches, which is what the size medium would come out as. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the size large for now. So I'm going to, not all over it, I'm going to start with a, sorry, I'm not explaining this very well, am I? I'm going to start with a size small on the bust, because that's exactly right. And I'm going to grade out to a large by the waist. And then what I'll do is, before I actually sew it up, I'll try it on. And then if it looks like it's going to be too big, I can always cut some out at the sides. I think that's probably the most sensible thing to do. So that's what I'm going to do for the moment. Okay, so I'm back. And I've managed to find my curve rulers so I can redraw the hem and everything where I want to. And while I was looking for them, because of course as usual they weren't where I thought they were, which really shows that I need to sort my sewing room out, I started thinking that actually there is a bust start in the Stockbridge top, which of course obviously there isn't in the shirt because it's a man's shirt. And I thought, actually, I might need to change that, and I might need to lower the bust start, because that. Hi, so this is future Laura coming to you from the editing suite and realising that there was a bit of a cut-off between what I was last saying about lowering the bus start and then the next clip. So just to say that once I realised I might need to lower the bus start, the first thing I did was I got my husband to mark on my front pattern piece where my apex of my bust looked to be, simply by just holding up the paper pattern piece against me, and you can see that on the next clip. It's the left hand lower cross that is marked, and I think I actually go on to explain that on the video. And then the other thing that I start to say at the beginning of the next section, but it doesn't come out very clearly, is that I used the Stitch Sisters Guide to Bust Adjustments, which is a video tutorial that you can purchase on their website, and then you have constant access to it for life. So I'll link the details down below. And where the apex isn't marked on a pattern, as is the case with this pattern, what you can do is you can draw a line through the centre of your dart and then extend it by 1.5 to 2 inches. And that is, broadly speaking, going to be the apex of the pattern. Where you've got a bust dart and a waist dart, it would be where the two intersect, but obviously on this pattern you've only got the one bust dart. And you'll see me pointing to the apex on the pattern in the next section. So I thought that it might be helpful for you if I just talked about that very quickly before you go into the next clip. So it's goodbye from future editing Laura and back to present sew along Laura. Say 1.5 to 2 inches, so that's measured at 1.5, so that's the apex. If we move down here, this cross here was myself and my husband attempting to work out where the bust dart would fall if you just put the pattern on me from the shoulder down and lined up the centre front line with the with my sort of centre front, if you like, the middle of my bra, and it came out there. But revisiting the Stitch Sisters video, it said quite rightly this is difficult to do with paper, so I've done a bit of measuring, and what you can do to work out your own bust apex is to take various measurements. So one of them is your apex to apex measurement, which in my case was 8 inches. So you halve it and you get 4 inches. So that line going down there is 4 inches away from the centre front line there. And then it says you can take a measurement which is from your shoulder seam down to your apex, which I did. But when I then tried to get a line from the shoulder seam to intersect with that line, it went horribly wrong. So I did what they also suggested, which is to take the measurement essentially from your waist, so pretty much from my tummy button, centre waist, upwards to my apex. And that came out at about, I think it was about 6 inches, something like that. So I haven't drawn the line in, but I measured 6 inches, so I think, and that seems pretty much right to me. And of course you can see that that's not far from where my husband estimated it. So doing it with the shoulder came out at somewhere ridiculous like that. So you can see there's actually, if I focus in a bit more, there's quite a big gap between where the apex of the pattern comes and where my apex comes. So what I thought I'd better do before I actually start messing around and grading out the sides is really to do the bust adjustment first. So it's not a full bust adjustment. All I'm going to do is relocate this dart here so that it's going to come down and in a bit so that it points not to there but to there. So I want it so that the legs of the dart are somewhere down there. So I'm going to do that now. So welcome back. So sometime later I've managed to move the bust dart. So if you can see here, that I'm pointing to is the original apex on the pattern, and I needed to move the dart so that it came to where my apex is, as I explained earlier. So what I've actually done is traced off the dart and then moved it so that that line intersected through my apex, which is there. But then I also had to bring it in a tiny bit because my apex is further over from the centre front. It's nearer the centre front. So I've done that. So what I had to do was split the dart and then realign the back end of the dart with the small seams, but keep that line as one so that the fold line stays even. And then I've redrawn the legs of the dart in and taped it all down. So that's the line that I need to tape for the dart. So hopefully that will work out okay. We'll see when we cut it. But it's such a loose top that hopefully it'll be fine. And so now what I'm going to do is simply to grade out from really where the bust is. So here, sort of bottom of the bust. And I'm going to grade out, now that we've got the dart done, pretty much fairly quickly in order to get out to the large size by the hip and certainly have it a bit wider on the waist. So I'm going to have to do this probably over a couple of inches maybe. So I'm going to try it like that. And hopefully that will be okay, and then just blend it in like that. So that will get it down to being at the right measurement for my hip, which actually we're taking as my high hip anyway. So I think we've got a bit of leverage on that. So that's roughly the line I'm going to follow. And then the other thing that I want to do is to probably retrace this cut line. So the way it works is that you use the bottom of the shirt to make any ruffles that you want, but also the back of the shirt is longer than the front. So what you have to do is you cut out the fronts first. I'm not going to do this tonight, but you cut out the fronts first. So I'll just show you very quickly. Here you line up the pattern so that I'm not going to do this now, so I'm just showing you quickly. You line it up so that your seam line goes up there, and you've got that aligned with the seam, and then that's going to be the bit that I'll need to trace around and cut. Obviously this is not currently cut to size because I waited until I got the dart out of the way. So I'm going to cut it out at the small and then grade out. And then what I shall do is I'll work out, if I line that up, you can't see terribly well, but hopefully you can now if I just hold that there. If I line that up, it comes out slap bang in the middle of a buttonhole. So my intention is probably to cut it a little bit lower so that I can still have that buttonhole in and just allow something for the hem. So I'll probably trace off my line there, because I'm not having a bottom ruffle. I'm only having a ruffle on the collar and possibly also the cuffs, and I'm not worried if I have to sacrifice one or the other. So what I will do is I will get I think I worked out it was the hip, wasn't that curve, it was this one. I will line this up to follow the curve like that, and then I will just slide it down to where I want in order to mark that up. But what I was going to say was that you cut out the shirt piece. In fact, I can show you on the pattern, that's probably the easiest way to show it. So you cut out the shirt piece like this, so you draw around the pattern piece and cut it out, and then what it asks you to do is to put your darts in first. And then once you've sewn your darts, you then measure the length of the front side seam from the armhole, and then you make your back piece to match that. So that's what I'm going to need to do before I can cut the back piece out of the shirt. So you don't actually unpick the shoulder seam, that stays. So it's going to be a bit strange because I'll have got rid of the sleeves because I'll have cut out the side seams, but I'll have this back and the collar kind of floating about as I sew the darts. But that's the next step. But it's quite late now. I did break off for dinner. I haven't been at it all night. It didn't take me that long to move the dart. So I'm going to stop there for now. But what I'll do is I'll come back to you at the point that I am ready to trace off the front onto the shirt and start cutting that out. So I'll come back to you next time that I work on this. Hi everyone, welcome back. So I've been away a little while. I think it's almost 2 weeks since I filmed the first part of this sew along. It's now Saturday 29th of October, but I'm still hoping to get this shirt finished by Monday to upload in time for the end of the Sew Upcycle 22 challenge. And I looked at the pattern again today and realised that actually you have to position the top of the pattern level with the part of the shirt which comes level with your shoulder seam, which you'd expect. But what I'd forgotten to take into account was that actually the back yoke kind of comes over on the top of my shoulders. So that's actually changed where the pattern piece would fall, and therefore changed my plan for where I was going to cut off the bottom of the shirt. So I tried the shirt on, and I've got my husband to mark where the shirt falls sort of more or less on why my shoulder seams are on this t-shirt, which incidentally is ready to wear from Marks and Spencer's. It's not me made. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the camera position and show you what I mean and where the shirt pattern will fall, and then it has to be traced out, and then you cut it out, sew the bust starts, and then you can actually determine from that how long the back needs to be. So here's the pattern piece. Sorry, there's a bit of precarious climbing going on, but hopefully I'm mostly out of shot so you can't see it. So what I have to do is to line the top of the pattern piece, which has a little star on it, hopefully you can see, with the top line of the shoulder. And then I need to line up the centre front, if you like, pattern bit of the pattern with the centre of the buttons on the shirt, which really actually is quite easy because I can follow the line of the buttonholes, and the shirt, as you can see, is stripy. I do apologise because the stripes might be pixelating a little bit on the screen. When I was trying to sort out camera angles, I did notice that where the pattern is, you do get a bit of pixelation, so I do apologise. I think it's why they tell newsreaders not to wear stripy shirts. So that's really roughly where the pattern piece is going to go. So what I need to do is flatten that out, put my pattern piece down securely, and then trace around it. I have no idea why and quite how you work it with that bit around the sleeve, but I think it probably just gets hidden by the seam allowance in the end. So I shall do that, and I'm going to actually probably cut it off. I might lengthen it very slightly because I think if I do it as the pattern is at the minute, you can see there's a buttonhole there. So I think I'll probably just trace down and lengthen it very slightly so that I can hem it. So I'll probably just lengthen it to maybe about there, because otherwise I'm going to have a bit of a problem, I think, with that button. So that's what I'll do. So I will put you on fast forward and take you along with me as I do that. The only other thing to mention is it does say in the pattern that if when you line the pattern piece up, and I haven't got it absolutely precisely at the moment, if you discover that the line on your shoulder of the shirt is different, it doesn't matter, you simply extend the armhole piece and then just make sure that you mark where you would want to line it up for the back. So you just take the line over onto the back yoke. So I'll get on and do that now, and then I'll come back to you. Okay, so I'm back. I'll just hold this up so you can see it. I've cut out the shirt front, so I traced it all out and I've cut out the shirt front, and you don't cut the shoulders as I mentioned before, so that stays, so it'll be worn like that when I wear it, so it'll be like that. And you don't cut round the collar line either, because I'm going to keep the collar. So I'm interested to see how the collar size shrinks, so we'll see when I do it. It maybe doesn't, but maybe it just sits in a different place once the darts are in and everything. So the next step is I need to mark the darts on the inside of the shirt, which I shall do. Hopefully I can trace those on. I've got some carbon paper, so I'm going to try and trace those on, or I might just do it with my chalk pen again, I'm not sure. But I don't think you need to see that. I think you've probably seen darts being marked before, so I shall do that. Hi, so this is future Laura again, just wanting to explain quickly about how to match the back to the front, because I don't know that came out all that clearly on the video. So what you do is you line up your asterisk on the pattern, which is here, with the top of your shoulder by the collar, and then you match, you make sure that that section there, which is the top of the armhole, is in line with the yellow piece that you've marked as the continuation from your armhole seam on the front, to make sure that they line up. And then this straight section lines up with the centre back of the shirt, and then obviously you flip it over. So you need to make sure that the side seam at the back matches the side seam at the front. And so what I did was that I lengthened the front of the pattern. So I needed to make sure that I did the same on the back. So I essentially measured the length of the side seam on the front, marked that on a piece of paper, and then mirrored this line using my curved ruler. And then I kind of followed what the pattern instructions said, because it says to cut out the side seams first and then to cut it out on the fold. But what I did was, of course, that I was then able simply to follow the line that I'd already marked on the amendment of the pattern, whereas the pattern suggests that you can do that with the original marking, or you can simply freehand, but because you've done it on the fold, you'll know it matches. But I thought it was easier, because I'd lengthened it, I thought it was easier simply for me to amend up the pattern, and then I knew that it would be right and it would match the front. So that's what I did. Back to past Sew Along Laura. Hi everyone, so it's now, what is it, Sunday afternoon. So I've been out at a sewing event with a friend earlier on today, and I've come back and I've carried on work with the shirt. Okay, so I'm back. So I went off and had a quick check of the instructions, And actually what the pattern suggests you do, and it's kind of nested in around the instructions around doing the ruffles, is to actually overlock the side seams individually before you sew anything together. And then what you need to do before you set the sleeves in is to sew the side seams together. So what I've decided to do, because it says, oh, you can, you can pin it and then you can try it on, is, or you can fit it to a mannequin. What I've decided I'm going to do is I've pinned my edges and I'm going to baste it at about just slightly. The seam allowances are 3/4 of an inch, so I'm going to baste it at just slightly less than that. Try it on, see what I think, which I think has another advantage as well, that I can see what I think about the collar size and whether I want to actually take the collar off or make a band collar, and what I would think about having a ruffle there. So I think if I do that, I'll be happy that the fit is going to be okay, fingers crossed, unless I've made it too small, which I don't think I have. And also it'll give me a better sense of how I feel about the collar. So I'm going to go and baste it, and then I'll try it on, and then I'll come back to you. Okay, so here it is. I'm not going to show you it full length because nobody needs to see my underskirt on YouTube. But I'm really pleased with it. So bust darts look to be pretty much in the right place. You remember I lowered them, and the armholes seem to fit nicely. I think I've done something slightly weird when I basted it, because one of the side seams looks a bit odd. So I'll have a look at that, but it's pretty much the right size. I could take it in a bit, but I'm not going to. I'm going to leave it. I think it's going to be fine. And the other thing is that I've decided to leave the collar as is, because I wouldn't wear it done up like this, I don't think, but I actually quite like it just, she says, struggling with it. I quite like it just undone a couple of notches. I think that looks fine, and that's how I would wear a shirt anyway. It's amazing that when it's sewn up, when it's all sewn up as a with the bust darts and everything, it really does pull the collar in. So I think the thing is that if I had a ruffle there, okay, you wouldn't have that bit of the collar, so it would be coming up there. I think I'd feel really constricted. So if I did it again, I might try a mandarin collar, but with the stripy shirt, which is kind of quite a smart style anyway, I think I'm just going to leave it as it is and not put ruffles on the collar. I think I'm just quite happy with it as a kind of amended version of the original shirt. So I am going now to sew the sides proper, and then I have to sew some gathering stitches at the top of the sleeves so that I can try to fit them in to the armholes. So I'll come back to you a bit later on in the process when I'm underway with the sleeves. So see you in a minute. Okay, so once I looked at the pattern, it's actually really quite clear about the sleeves. So what you do, if I just show you on the pattern, what it says is you simply lie the pattern on. I'm just trying to make sure that this is in shot. You just lie the pattern on, and you draw around as best you can in terms of making it fit with your own sleeves from your shirt. But I've got the bottom of the pattern lined up with the bottom of the cuff, which is what it says to do. And then I've simply, if I move that back, hopefully you can see, I've just extended that line out and traced round, and that seems to have worked out fine. I just used my arm side curve bat in order to extend it out. And then what you do is when you put it into the shirt, you simply sew some gathering stitches into the top of the shirt sleeve and insert it as you would for any usual garment. So I'm going to get on and cut this one out and do the same for the other other sleeve, and then I'll join you at the sewing machine for the next steps. Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm sorry, I've got a bit of a scratchy throat for some reason. So it's now Halloween. It's actually Monday 31st of October, and it's just after 7 o'clock here in the UK, and I'm still sewing my shirt. But fingers crossed, and with a bit of hopefully Halloween magic, I will get it done. So what I did last night after I last filmed was I sewed up the side seams after you remember I'd basted them, so I sewed them up properly, and they were already overlocked, and then I've given them a good press today and they are, I think, looking good, so that's good. And then just now I've also overlocked the hem, so much as I would really like to do it with bias binding, I think probably A, I'm going to be too short of time, B, I'm going to be too short of fabric, and actually it's not a very, if I hold this up you can see, it's not a hugely pronounced curve on the hem. It's not as, you know, some really dip down, and that is really not too bad. And I think it suggests you do a hem of, what is it? I think you turn it over by 1 centimetre and then turn it over by another 1.5 centimetres. I might do it a little bit smaller than that because I quite like the length of it on me. So yeah, so it's not too bad. So I'm just going to go with that. So I've already overlocked it, so that when I've inserted the sleeves and I go and press those, I can press at the hem at the same time, come back and sew that, and then it'll be done. And I've been really good, and I've finished off all my overlocking ends as well. And the other thing I did last night, before I stopped for the evening, is I sewed in 2 lines of gathering stitches. Can you see that? On the top of each sleeve. And what you do with these, my machine's actually got a setting called easing. So it's specifically meant for this purpose of trying to gather fabrics for the purpose of easing them into a smaller hole. So what you do is you pull on the bobbin threads, which in my case are on the outside of the shirt sleeves, and that creates kind of ruching, and it suggests you try and get the bulk of the ruching up near the top of the sleeve. So I sewed the lines in. It does actually say only sew 1. What I've done is I've sewn 2 because I read some fantastic advice somewhere that actually it's better to sew 2 because then if one goes horribly wrong or breaks, you haven't got a problem. And in fact one of mine has gone a bit tangly, but it's fine because I've got another one. So I've sewed 1 inside the seam allowance and 1 just outside, but obviously I can take them out later. So what I've got to do now is to try to set these into my shirt. So I've already turned it inside out rather, as you can see. So there's the front of it turned inside out, and now I've got my sleeves labelled. So I've got left front of the sleeve and right front of the sleeve, and that's as I'm wearing it. So I am going to, what you have to do is you drop the sleeves through the armhole so that you're doing right side to right side and then pin them in. So I'm going to go and do that, but I'm going to do it off camera because it'll be fiddly and I'll probably mess about and spend ages doing it, and you really don't need to see that. And then I'll come back and show you it just before I sew. And I think the other thing I'm going to do, because I was glad I did it on the side seams, is I'm going to baste in the sleeves before I actually sew them, because if I'm happy with them and they don't look puckered and awful, and I'm happy with the distribution of where the excess fabric's going, then I can get rid of the gathering stitches before I sew it for real, and then just go round hopefully a bit more confidently, knowing that I've basted it in the right place. So that's the plan. Keep your fingers crossed. I have to say, you might have heard this, I don't know if you can hear it. It is pouring with rain outside. I've closed the curtains to make it a bit more cosy, and it really feels very autumnal outside today, I have to say. I'm wearing a ready-to-wear sweatshirt and t-shirt. Been at work working all day. And now I'm just looking forward to a nice evening sewing and hopefully getting some pictures taken before midnight to get this done. But I think if there's any trick-or-treaters out there, they're going to be really soggy. So I'm going to pop you on hold for now, go off and pin my sleeves in, and then I'll be back to show you before I sew. Okay, so I'm back and I have pinned in the sleeves, so hopefully you can see that. Actually, it wasn't too bad. I've put quite a bit of gathering. I've tried to do it kind of by using the yoke of the shirt as a bit of a natural marker. The thing I did do before I actually put the sleeves in was I marked the top point of the shirt, which obviously you would normally get on a pattern, or you'd put a notch in it when you're cutting it out, but because this was like an existing shirt, it didn't have that. And I also did the same on the top of the armhole, so I'd at least got the underneath seam on the sleeve to match to the the underarm seam on the sleeve and the side seam, so I matched those up. And then I did a little snip and put a pin in at the point on the yoke where which was kind of halfway around the armhole, and also the same on the sleeve, so that gave me a bit of a guide. But hopefully I've managed to get most of the gathers near the top as advised, so fingers crossed that will go in okay. So I am going to go, and I'm just putting another pin in because I just saw a bit that looked a bit scary. So I'm going to go and put that through the sewing machine. I'm so tempted just to do it with ordinary thread, but I'm not going to. I'm going to change the thread, and I'm going to put in a contrasting colour so I can see what I'm doing, which I didn't do when I basted the underarms, although it was okay. And so I'm going to try and baste them in, and then I will come back and show you. Okay, so I'm back, and I had a quick break for dinner, and I've managed to baste in both sleeves, and I've turned it the right way out to have a quick look. So the line of stitching you can see there is one of the gathering stitches, so I kind of basted it sort of hopefully between the two lines of stitching. Sorry, I'm trying to look in the camera, but I'm also trying to make sure that you can see that, which I think you can. So I don't know what's happened to my hair. So yes, I think I've got them in. They're not puckered or anything, and most of the gathering seems to be on the top of the sleeve, which is where it's meant to be. So I think once they've had a good press, they'll be absolutely fine. Okay, so I'm back, and in the interests of full disclosure, I'm going to say this is actually a few days later. I'm just winding up the video ready for editing, and I'll show you the shirt on me at the end. But after I left you last time and I'd basted the sleeves in and I was happy with it, I sewed the sleeves in place, and then all I had left to do was to overlock the armholes. So I did that, and then I hemmed the shirt, and as I thought I would, what I ended up doing was just to put a really narrow hem on it. So I turned it over 1/4 of an inch, which was about the width of the overlocking that I'd got on the bottom, and turned it over again, just pressed it all down and sewed it. And of course, because it was narrow, that meant that actually it was fairly easy to do. It wasn't too difficult, and I just did it with a top stitch length stitch. So shirt was finished. I got the photographs up on Instagram in time for the end of the Sew Up Cycle 22 challenge, but I thought that actually it was pretty late, and it would be better to just come back and tell you what was left to do another time. So I apologise for that, but yes, that's all I had left to do after I left you at the end last time. So I'm going to put the shirt on and just have a little bit of a general chat about what I thought of the pattern overall, and you can see it on me made up. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that sew along. So here's the finished garment on me. What do you think? Got it untucked today. Had it tucked in on my photo that I put on Instagram on the day of the challenge. So I'll just turn around so you can see. So yeah, so that's the finished garment. I think the bust starts have ended up in the right place. I like the croppy 3/4 sleeves. I'm always pushing sleeves up anyway, so I quite like the fact that they're a bit shorter. I think the collar, I can do it up if I want to, as you saw on the sew along, but I'm much more likely to just wear it like this with a necklace. And I really like with the striped shirt, I actually really like it without the ruffles. So I'm really happy. So I'll come and sit down and I'll talk a little bit more about the pattern. So just before I do, and you can see Olivia is now back sulking in the corner because I've taken the shirt off her. She's such a diva. But before I do go and talk about the pattern, just like to say, if you're enjoying what I'm doing and you're not already subscribed, then please do consider subscribing, because that really helps my channel. And also, if you've enjoyed seeing this sew along, whether you're a subscriber or not, then please do click the like button down below and give me a thumbs up, because it helps to show YouTube that people are enjoying my content and it helps to spread the word. So that would be lovely. Thank you. So, what did I think of the pattern? Well, I love the end product, and would I make it again? Yes, I would. I think you have to find the right shirt though, and I think looking at the remnants I've got left, I don't know that I would have had enough to make the ruffles, because I chose to lengthen the shirt. So I think you may always have a little bit of a trade-off between, do you want the shirt to be a longer length for you, or do you want to have the ruffles? So obviously for Sew Up Cycle 22, the idea was that you were using the fabric that was in existing clothing. Obviously with a shirt that was plainer, or if you had fabric that went with it, you could always make the ruffles out of something else, so that wouldn't necessarily be a problem. But I think in the end I might have struggled to do that. So yes, I mean, it's interesting. I didn't try in the end because I like the look as it is. But I definitely think if you're taller, if you've got a longer body, you'd need a much bigger shirt in order to get those ruffles out of it. Though it does say you need quite a big shirt in order to make, it says 17.5-inch collar to make a medium. And that's what I've got. I've got a 17.5-inch collar. And as you saw in the video, I made a small on the bust and then I graded out to a large by the hip, and I think that was right. And I think it was right to extend it by 2 inches as well, because it's a nice length on me and I'm really happy with it. I'm really happy with the fit. I'm really pleased to move the bust starts down. I think it fits much better. So although it was time consuming to do it, I think it was a good thing for me to do. And I'm so pleased with that, that I think what I might well do is compare the bust start on the revised version, almost treat it like a block if you like, so that I'll have a better idea as to when I might need to move bust starts in the future. So definitely that was a good idea. So in terms of sizing, I talked about my size in the video, but I didn't talk about the size overall. So this goes from an extra small, which is bust of 34 inches, waist of 26 inches, and hip of 36 inches, up to a 3XL, which is a bust of 46 inches, a waist of 38 inches, and a hip of 48 inches. So not hugely size inclusive, really, I don't think. So that's a bit of a shame. But I guess it's partly determined by the size of man's shirt that you're likely to get, so perhaps that's why. But yes, it's not the most inclusive pattern, and if you look at the finished hip measurement on the 3XL, it's still only 49.5 inches, so there's not a whole lot of ease in it. So, you know, some patterns where the sizes that are bigger, actually you can get away with it because of the ease. I don't think you could on this one. Okay, so that's the sizing. The other thing I wanted to say was, it says it's for a confident beginner or intermediate level. So I definitely think you need to be a more advanced sewist, not because the actual construction was difficult when you've worked out what's going on. It's actually very simple, and I think now that I've done it once, I wouldn't find it as difficult to do it again. But as you saw in the sew along, there was a bit of head scratching at times, and I very nearly cut it at the wrong length because I'd forgotten that the yoke kind of goes over the shoulder a bit. So I nearly had my front starting there instead of up at the top on there, which is where my shoulder seam proper would have been, really. So that kind of thing. And I remember saying on the film, I said, I don't know what on earth happens because your front section goes out in towards the armhole, and the answer is you just have to kind of go with it. You can see it's there, but nobody will see it because it's under the armpit. So it does look a bit counterintuitive at times, but I was really impressed by the way it does actually all work together. So things like the fact that once you've got the bust starts in, and you've made the shoulders smaller, the neck does pull in and fit. So this is a 17.5-inch collar, but it fits me fine. So that's really impressive. I was really impressed with how easily the sleeves went in. So yes, I think as long as you're kind of mindful of the fact that the pattern might have limitations based on the fact that you may need to alter the pattern to suit your body, and that might impact on the amount of fabric you've got left over, as I mentioned before, for ruffles. And as long as you're prepared to say, okay, I'll give it a go, and if it doesn't work out, you know, if you're making it with an old shirt, then, you know, it's not going to be a huge loss if it all goes wrong. But I was pleasantly surprised at the fact it didn't go wrong. I did mess up. I think I edited this out of the video, because what I did when I cut the front out, I should have started cutting at the placket to cut out the bottom hemline, and I didn't. I sort of went up towards where the pattern came down for the side seam, and of course that meant I didn't have one long continuous piece that I would have been able to make ruffles out of. I suspect it wouldn't have mattered. I could have probably hidden the join if I had done ruffles. But yes, that was really strange, because some of the instructions are really detailed, but it doesn't say that. So I've made a note to myself to remember to do that next time if I do it again. It's made me think I could maybe try and do this with other patterns. So I have a nightie that someone gifted me, and it's a jersey nightie, and it has poppers down the front, and I think I'm wondering if I can maybe use the Love Notions Henley tee and use the same concept to try to alter that into a Henley tee that would fit me by just keeping it joined at the shoulders and taking off the shoulder seam and trying to preserve the neckline. So might have a go at that. Let me know in the comments below if you think that's something you'd like to see, but it is something I might have a go at. So I'm really pleased. Would I do it again? Yes, definitely. I would be quite interested to try it in a different sort of shirt, maybe a softer shirt, a less formal shirt, brighter shirt. And I'd be quite interested to do it with some ruffles, but maybe in a contrasting fabric. So that's all from me today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, goodbye.